morning. Good morning. I am delighted to be with you this morning, and I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to Roy, who presented you with a new way of being and a new way of thinking last week, and did me an enormous favor at the 11th hour, and I'm most grateful, Roy. Thank you very much, very much. This morning, the talk title is, "What do you bring to the table?" And this is one of those, some would say, oh, it's going to be a Thanksgiving talk, is it? Well, yes, it's going to be a lifelong Thanksgiving talk, a way of being that's kind of brought forth, certainly in my mind, by two things. The fact that many of us, not all, but many of us will sit down to a Thanksgiving table somewhere, somehow, some way, even if that table is in our mind. And it is a time of year when we choose, as a country, as a nation, as a culture, to give thanks, to literally say we're grateful, and to give and to receive. What I'm going to bring into your world today, and as we co-create, I'm sure some questions will come up, is what Charles Fillmore, one of our co-founders, said about giving and receiving, as far as it being a spiritual law. And he expounded on that in lesson 10 of his book, Prosperity. Some of you have this on your bookshelf. If you don't, I would encourage you. This is one for the library. And there are essentially 12 lessons about prosperity. I chose lesson 10 because it is entitled Right Giving the Key to Abundant Receiving. We'll note the words right giving. And some of you may question, what do you mean right giving? There's giving and receiving. Okay, I know how to do both. And Charles submits in lesson 10, we do not have a clue about right giving in order to abundantly receive. We see it and have for some time, in his opinion, rather superficially. We assume we know what it means to give, and we assume we know what it means to receive. And we take it on the surface, and we don't, as Charles is fond of saying, plumb the depths of what the law really means. What does it mean, right giving? And why is it the key to abundant receiving? He talks at great length about how we, as human beings, think we know that to receive and to give are two sides of the same coin, when in fact he makes the point, if you don't give, you never will receive. Without giving, the soul dies, the soul shrivels up, the heart is closed if we do not give. And that is a new perspective for many people. Giving, right giving, has what Charles refers to in the Jesus Christ doctrine as a love offering, if you will, a free offering, a free will offering plan to replace the world's commercial standard of reward for service. See, many of us think that trading is giving and receiving. I'll trade you that if you give me that. And we think that's a giving and receiving proposition, and it isn't. It's trading. We'll get to right giving in a minute. Some of us think that when we give a charitable donation, and I'll go on about charity in a minute because Charles does too, that we are giving and receiving. When in fact the word charity sets us up for a benevolent one giving to someone who has less, or seeming so. I want to talk to you as far as the giving and receiving being of equal value in the sense that you can't have one without the other, with giving leading the way. It may sound a tad confusing. I just want to be certain that we understand that giving is first and then the receiving. And very often we'll have issues with receiving. That's another talk. Today we're going to talk about giving and how it relates to receiving. When we give in a free will offering plan, we give on the basis of love and justice. We give equally, with no expectation of anything in return. I don't know about you, but I certainly have given my share of things when I expected something in return. You know, how about thank you? That was always a famous one in our house. Do you know how to say thank you? I'm not giving you anything unless you thank me. There is no equity, there is no justice, and there's no love in that kind of giving. That's a giving that says, I want something in return. And giving in its free will offering plan that Jesus put forth is giving that is done joyfully, without strings, with no expectation of return, and is given as though and in the fact we are stewards of the abundance of this world. We are all equally blessed by the Spirit of God. We are all students, persons of abundance. Not one is greater than the other. Very often, there are times, especially the way that some of us were raised, where we look around and think because we have certain things, well, I'm lucky. I have these things. Johnny down the street doesn't have anything. That is something that we are set up for, even as children, to judge, if you will, poor Johnny down the street who has nothing. You don't know if Johnny down the street has nothing. All you know is that Johnny down the street doesn't have some of the things that you have been asked to consider important. And we grow up thinking that the things are important. The amassing of wealth, or Charles calls it money getting, just flat out money getting. We're a culture that goes and gets money. We're fixed on money, and there's not right giving in any of that, and there's not right receiving. We have been primed and told that when we give a service, we get paid for it. That is very human. That is in our world, yes, in our culture. We are talking spiritual law, where there's no payment for services. There's an equal exchange between two parties based on love and justice. Two very powerful spiritual attributes. Charles is asking us to live our entire lives in everything we say and do in a free will love mode of operation. Well, Reverend Sandy, what exactly does that mean? You know, if I'm taking my car in to be serviced, I want it to be serviced and I'll pay the guy. Yes, of course we want that. But if you go and approach something like that in the consciousness of love, of justice, of exchange, an even, honest exchange, not a trade, not a paid for services. Now some of you may be sitting there saying, well, wait a minute, you can't have it both ways. I'm asking you, and Charles is asking you, as Jesus asked and said in much of his doctrine on giving and receiving, it's how you go about the task. Are you going in with a consciousness that says, if he doesn't fix that leak, I'm not paying him? Or are you going in with a consciousness that says, I am as is he or she, a child of God. We are equal, we are just, and we are going to have a loving exchange. Now, I've had friends who, when I said this or preached this, have rolled their eyes literally and said, what planet are you coming from? I'm coming from the planet of spiritual uplifted consciousness. That's the planet. That's where I'm coming from. Because I believe that when you approach all of life's situations, if you do it on love and justice, and you do it from a giving heart, and not for a what's in it for me heart, that is spiritual law. And when you give from that consciousness, you will always receive in kind. You see, the law is this, and you know this, most of you have heard this. Give as you receive. Only through giving can you receive. Give as you receive. Give as you receive. If you're walking around thinking that you don't really have much to show, are you giving? Are you giving with no expectation of receiving? I love this Bible scripture, and many of you probably know this. This is from Luke chapter 6, verse 28. Forgive and you will be forgiven. Give and it will be given to you. Not it might be given to you, it will be given to you. Give, it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back. So, how are you giving? Some of you may say, well, I'm giving. Well, are you giving with pennies? Are you giving with dollars? Are you giving on the cheap? Are you thinking, what can I get by with? I'll give. Oh, okay, if that's what you say. I'll get back what I give. But I don't have a lot of money, Reverend Sandy. I can't be given thousands of dollars. Maybe you can't be giving thousands of dollars. Maybe that's not realistic. Question is, are you giving? Are you giving from your heart, even a penny? You see, it's not about the amount of money. It's about the amount of heart invested in what you're giving. When I titled this talk, What Are You Bringing to the Table? I was telling the group yesterday that at Thanksgiving table at our house for years, there was always one grump that showed up. And it was never usually the same person, but they would show up because they didn't have enough sleep, they'd been out a little late the night before, they didn't have anything to, quote, bring, didn't like the dark meat. That was always a big deal. Never had the dark meat. And all of this would be voiced right up front. You know, we're at the table, for Pete's sake. A beautiful Thanksgiving table. And my lovely mother would sit down and she would go on about how much she loved her family. How grateful she was for the spread before us. And Mr. Grumpy would try and chime in with, I don't want that. Don't pass that dark meat to me. Leave that alone. Oh, I'm so pleased. I'm so grateful to be here with you all, including you, Mr. Grumpy. She didn't say that, but I sent that for her. And here's what happened. And this was, we recognized it. Whether she did it on purpose or not, I'll never know. But Mr. Grumpy turned into, yeah, okay, I'll take some of that dark meat. How are you? How you been? How's the family? And my mother did it year after year. She changed the energy of the giving and the receiving at the Thanksgiving table. It was quite a feat to see, if you allowed yourself to see it. She did give and receive on an equal basis, and that included Mr. Grumpy. You see, it's a small thing, but ask yourself, how are you giving? Are you giving from a free will gift? And here are some of the points that are brought out in free will giving. Never for a moment allow yourself to entertain any scheme for getting the better of your fellows in trade for anything. Hold steadily to the law, equity, and justice that is working in and through you, knowing for a certainty that you are supplied with everything necessary to fulfill your requirements. Give full value for everything you get and demand the same for everything you give, but do not try and enforce that by human methods. There's a better way. Think of yourself as spirit working with a powerful spiritual force and knowing that the demands of spirit must and will be met. When you show up at the table of life, do you actually believe that you're of spirit, that you're an ambassador, if you will, of spirit, that you are giving the supply, the abundance of spirit? And here's one that some of us don't like. I can barely hear the retirement plans at this point. Do not plan to lay up for the future. Let the future take care of itself. Remember, we are talking about a spiritual plane here. To entertain any fears or doubts on that point saps your strength and depletes your spiritual power. Hold steadily to the thought of the omnipresence of universal supply, its perfect equilibrium, and its swift action in filling every apparent vacuum or place of lack. Now, we have had a tumultuous year. We have had a tumultuous time in the last 2 weeks. There are appearances of lack, of fear. I'm asking you to go back and challenge yourself about your beliefs of omnipresence, of omniscience, of never-ending supply. And wherever there is a seeming vacuum, to believe and know the universe, spirit, will fill that vacuum. But that begins with each of us. That begins in your own individualized belief of the law of giving and receiving. Give in the spirit of love, and give when you cannot see any possibility of return. Put real substance into your gift of giving, the substance of the heart. See yourself as a steward of God, handing out his inexhaustible supplies. Think about that. You're here as a steward, handing out inexhaustible supply. Some of you are automatically possibly thinking about money or gifts. How about yourself? How are you going to show up at both the Thanksgiving table and the table of life? Do you show up, and are you fully present when you do show up? And what does fully present mean? It means joyfully. It means from your heart. It means that you're fully engaged when you show up. It's a choice. You don't have to show up. And if you show up, are you fully engaged? Maybe not. You might say, well, there's days I don't feel fully engaged, thank you very much. I'm just glad I'm here. Fine. It's your choice. The challenge is, take another look at how you're showing up when you show up. Are you fully present? Be happy in your giving. We got a chuckle out of this yesterday. Most of us grew up, I certainly did, with, the Lord loves a cheerful giver, Sandra. Fork it over. You know, cheerfully? I don't know, not always cheerfully, thank you very much. But the word cheerful from the Greek is hilarious. So we're talking not only cheerful giving, we're talking hilarious giving. When you give, are you giving from the joy of the heart? Are you making it a joyful experience? And do not give any idea that you are bestowing charity. And here's what he says about charity. So take this to the bank or not. The idea of charity has infested the race consciousness for thousands of years, and it's responsible for the great army of human dependence. Do all you can to annul this mental error. There is no such thing as charity, as popularly understood. Now, hang in here. Everything belongs to God, and all his children are equally entitled to it. The fact that one has a surplus and gives some of it to another does not make the one a benefactor and the other a dependent. See the difference? The one with the surplus is simply a steward of God and is merely discharging the work of his stewardship. When one asks for divine wisdom and understanding about giving, it becomes a joy both to the giver and to the recipient. Note the first part of that sentence. When one asks for divine wisdom and understanding. Ask when you give. Go to your divine wisdom. What is the best form of giving? Is there a way I can give from my heart with laughter, with joy, that's of equanimity, that's based on love and justice? That's the key here in the law. Also, he talks about everyone should give as he receives. In fact, it is only through giving that he can receive. Until the heart is quickened at the center and the mind is open to truth, there's no permanent healing. Our work is to bring men and women to the place of true and lasting dominion, where they're superior to both riches and poverty. Chew on that one for a while. We can do this by showing we are spiritual beings in a spiritual world here and now. How often have I even said, we're spiritual beings having a human experience? Charles says, no, we are spiritual beings having a spiritual experience on the human plane. Think about that one. We're plumbing the depths now. Also, lastly, I want to make sure that I hit some of his high spots. You may have been fostering poverty by holding ideas of pennies instead of dollars, or of hundreds instead of thousands. may be thinking that you cannot give because your income is small or your supply is limited. Your remedy is to cultivate ideas of abundance. Claim God as your inexhaustible resource, that all things are yours. But in order to set in motion, here's the how-to. The accumulated energy of your thought, you must also begin to give. I don't know about you, but there are people I know who don't give of themselves, who hoard their love, who do not give. What his point is here is give. Just begin to give at whatever level you can. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies you. It is not the amount you give measured by standards of the world. It is the good will you send forth with the gift, which can be measured only in spiritual standards. And so I'm going to close with this prayer and just take these words in. And if you will, let us pray. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies this offering. The Father gives abundantly. I receive thankfully and give again generously. This is the bounty of God, and I send it forth with wisdom and joy. Divine love bountifully supplies and increases this offering. I give freely and fearlessly, fulfilling the law of giving and receiving. Amen.